All right, let's get started. This one, I'm trying to combine a few different dreams here, but they've all got, kind of end times stuff. Okay, so I think what I'm going to call, what could we call this? I think I'm just going to call it Out of Time, and maybe I'll put some sort of description to it or something like that. But obviously that feeds into, end time stuff, low on time, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go into that particular one, really, that title comes from, is the first one I'll go through. So this was a short dream, but it's still quite interesting. So this one, 4th of October 2024, very short dream. I had literally just before waking up. So it was just me and my wife, and we were in a flat or a house. I couldn't really recognise whether it was a flat or a house. And it wasn't in the best shape. It was pretty cluttered. But what stood out was that every single room I entered had a really abnormal amount of clocks in it. A little bit like, I'm only going to mention this because of, it came up in a quiz today actually. So it reminded me actually of Back to the Future. You've got Dr. Emmett Brown. There's loads of clocks everywhere, isn't there? When Marty goes in, because he's looking after his place while he's away, and there's clocks everywhere. You've got like the Felix cat thing with the things like that. And I only mention that purely because there was a question to do with the film Back to the Future on my quiz, and I walked upstairs. My daughter's got a poster of Back to the Future, and yeah, just maybe kind of link that in there. But it was like that, loads and loads of clocks everywhere, really abnormal amount of clocks. So every room you'd go into, there was kind of 4 or 5 clocks, something like that, roughly every single room you went into. That was weird. That was really weird, this bit, right? So I'm walking around, and as we're going from room to room, I decide I pick my wife up. So I'm lifting her up, almost like you would do when you get married. When you would say you would carry her across the threshold. I don't know what that's all about, to be honest. I've never looked into that to see why we do that, but that's, crossing the threshold. I'm not sure what that's all about. Maybe I'll have to explore that, but that's what I was doing. For some reason, I'm picking her up, lifting her up, and carrying her from room to room, and then putting her down. Once we're in the room, I'm putting her down, and I'm kind of just with my eyes, kind of like counting up the clocks. As I said, there's just so many in there. And all I can think of, obviously, is I'm assuming that it's, what am I supposed to be getting from that? Well, clocks, time, maybe it's pointing me to time. Makes sense, doesn't it? And oddly, okay, what's this saying? Sorry, what's this saying? Pointed out something to do with time, whether there's not enough time or the time's coming, something like that. I'm not really sure. I said, oddly, when we went to bed, I realised it was our house and had been there for a while, but not realised we had pink wallpaper in this room, and I'd never gone into it before except at night time. There was something to do with an inappropriate influence from a stepfather. What's this all about? That would not have happened with a normal father. Okay, so I think we know what that's sort of talking about. But I had no detail on it at all. It felt like more of a house than a flat, but not that we had been there really for too long, because it still didn't feel like a home. It could have been somewhere that we had for only maybe we'd only just moved in and was taking time to make it our own. Similar to the amount of years we've been in our current property. We've been there about 8 years or something like that, and it's home now. Obviously it's home, but it's taken a very long time. It was kind of like not touched since the 1970s. We moved in, it was like, wow, everything needs doing here. Obviously we knew that ahead of time, but it's, how much it's going to cost to set it all, get it all sorted. So thoughts. I don't know, that was all a bit weird, wasn't it? About the pink wallpaper and something to do with some sort of inappropriate behaviour between a stepfather and a daughter. I've got no idea what that was all about. That was a bit all over the place. So I don't know what that's to do with. Obviously, that's talking about the previous occupants, but how that's relevant, I don't know. But I think that the clocks are what I was drawn to, and also my wife's attention was drawn to that, and time. Time was obviously what it was pointing to. Again, I had a dream really recently, which was crescent moons, and it was crescent moon, crescent moon, crescent moon, crescent moon, crescent moon. There's like 7 crescent moons in the sky, and I was like, got it, crescent moon. So it's the same sort of thing, you know, stacks and stacks of clocks everywhere. Okay, well, it must be something to do with time. I remember even seeing it on a video recorder. You know, when you've unplugged a video recorder or a microwave or something like that, you know, and you haven't bothered to change the time back to what it actually is because you just can't be bothered, and it's flashing. Well, the time on this video recorder was flashing. So again, it's like alerting to time, isn't it? Yeah, but it was all like mantelpiece, you know, like clocks above your fireplace, and like just clocks everywhere. All sorts of clocks on walls, clocks amongst pictures, clocks everywhere. Yeah, so wall mounted video recorders. I think all the clocks were showing the same time, and nothing leapt out to me like a typical 1 minute to midnight kind of thing. Do you know that kind of thing? There was nothing like that. There was no obvious symbology where I looked at the thing and thought, oh, it's I don't know, using some sort of numbers that mean something. There was nothing like that. I mean, apparently they were all the same sort of time, but nothing that really jumped out. Yeah, and the interesting element was obviously that I was picking her up, and I was showing her the clocks, like I needed to help show her time in some way, you know. Is it the time's picking up, you know, that it is within my power to influence the outcome, that I am picking her up out of danger. Also, of course, makes me think of the rapture, where the rapture, of course, is you being whipped up, you know, picked up like the harpazo, the catching away, which is where you know the typical imagery is like of a little girl or a boy running towards their dad, and then the dad lifts them up super quick. That's harpazo. That's how that word is used. That's the usage of that word, is that sudden snatching up, and that's the example of that's kind of used in Greek is to describe that kind of action. Yeah. As I said, yeah, images of Jesus lifting us up to take us across, you know, out of danger, that kind of stuff. But yeah, as I said, that's pretty much where that ended, and I don't know quite where to go from there, other than maybe it being some kind of a nod to the rapture. I'm going to do a next one, which is again end times. As I said, it's going to be end times I was going to cover off here. So this is now going back a little bit. So this is 29th of December 2023. I actually had a dream about twin suns. Now, twin suns is very unusual as far as I know. So I've heard lots of them to do with twin moons. Now, I've got some theories about that. Why twin moons? Well, it's an omen, isn't it? If you see anything that's in the sky that's out of the ordinary, then that obviously means, you know, it could mean something like judgment is coming or something like that. I think we can all agree on probably it means something probably not good. But I do wonder whether it's talking about something to do with the asteroid that's going to hit, or the meteor, whatever you want to call it, comet that's going to hit Earth. Why can't I think of the name? Can't think of the name right now. Wormwood. There we go. Wormwood, which is in Revelation, and it's a you know, again, a comet or something. I can't remember if it's a comet, asteroid, as I said, meteor, that hits the Earth and it poisons all the water. Wormwood as well. That's an interesting. I remember because I was reading the King James version actually when I remember first seeing that, and there were some other words in there that I was kind of looking up, and I thought, wormwood, what does that mean? What does that actually mean? I've never heard that before. Seems so specific. Why would it be named wormwood? And if you Google wormwood and what that is, that's actually connected to, you know, some sort of a plant that's a part of the absinthe family. You know, the drink absinthe that makes you go nuts and hallucinate and things like that. You know, the green fairy, it's kind of referred to as, isn't it? You know, it's in Moulin Rouge, isn't it, where they're drinking absinthe, and not that I like that movie, Moulin Rouge, and it has a green fairy and stuff in it. And Van Gogh, obviously, he cut his ear off, didn't he, to give to somebody he was infatuated with on absinthe, because he was just out of his mind on this stuff. I actually had it, and to be honest, that was on like a stag do thing again. You know, when I was young and a bit wild, and that completely ended my night. You know, I'd had quite a few drinks, but they just went slammed into me. You know, as soon as I did the absinthe, you know, did this just a shot of it. I think it was quite a bit actually, but I had a shot of absinthe, and it was like 80% alcohol or something like that, so twice as powerful as a Jack Daniels, for example, twice as powerful. And I had that, but it's not just that; it makes you act weird. So I won't tell you what happened after that, but let's just say it was a night ender, and I was gone, completely gone after that. But absinthe, anyway. So absinthe, it's basically a painkiller. It can be used as a painkiller, and so I thought, obviously, this asteroid hitting the Earth. Let's call it an asteroid for now. An asteroid hitting the Earth, and it causes the water to go bitter. There is just coming to mind, there is a bit in the Bible where it talks about bitter waters that are made sweet. I think it is, but I can't remember. That's in the Old Testament, but I can't quite remember what that's to do with. But the bitter waters are made sweet, so it's drinkable. This is the opposite. Drinkable water goes to bitter, so that they can't drink it. But people will drink it because they have to drink it, you know. But it's basically poisoned. It is a poison. I mean, alcohol is kind of like that, really, isn't it? You know, the reason we act the way we act with alcohol is because of its, you know, your body doesn't want it, you know, and it causes all these weird side effects because it's kind of poisoning your body, really. And it's also the way that your body, if you're an alcoholic, you know, you end up, your body craves it, it needs it, you know. Again, it's like, yeah, it's a weird scenario. So it did make me think of that asteroid. So that there's also one, again, I mean everybody's talking about it, so I'm not even going to mention it, but there is a one that's meant to be coming in very, very close to Earth, that's going to be coming inside of the our satellite network. So it's coming inside between the moon and the and the Earth. Could that be you know, these twin moons? Could it be a kind of a nod to, you know, something very, not that's going to be the size of the moon at all, but bringing our attention to something coming close to Earth, or coming, you know, close to our moon, or something like that, maybe. I mean, that's one that I've heard. I'm going to say, like Apophis. I think it's called Apophis. This one that's going to come close. And they said that what I was hearing recently is that if it comes too close, it's going to be redirected by the Earth's gravity, and it's going to swing it in, so that if it does go a bit too close and it's sucked in, then it means on the time it comes around, it's going to be a direct hit. So, I mean, that could well be. I think as far as the timing goes, it was something like 2029 or something like that. But again, I don't want to fearmonger, but that was something I saw quite recently, because obviously there's so many of us as Christians who are looking for signs everywhere, aren't we? I mean, the amount of dreams I've had with signs in the sky is crazy. Stacks of them. So, as I said, twin suns. Sorry, I haven't even gone into this yet, have I? Twin suns. So, as I said, twin moons. Not uncommon as amount of people who have seen twin moons. But twin suns, it was the first one I had, I think, was twin suns. And I didn't think of anything of it. And actually, I wasn't even aware of twin moons was even a thing until later, which I'm going to quickly read. But yeah, twin suns. I was basically I was looking out of a window. I was in an apartment, and there was just two suns side by side in the sky. Apparently, they were like twins, so they literally looked, you know, exactly the same. They looked side by side. They look exactly the same. And I did when I had this dream. Felt like it was like some sort of end time sign. As I said, I even wrote that. Yeah, like an omen, some sort of a weird omen. Yeah, suns were both the same size. They looked identical. And then when I came out of the dream, it looks like it says here, I tried Googling twin sun dreams, but nothing at all came up. But I have heard of, I thought at this point when I'm writing this, or writing this on my phone when it originally happened, I thought that this was something that people had. I'm obviously thinking about twin moons, okay? But yeah, this was a strange little bit about this dream. And again, I'm always in two minds as to whether to mention certain things I notice and note. But in this dream, let's say everyone I could see around me was dressed like somebody who belongs to a religion that has a crescent moon. Let's just say that. Everywhere I looked were people from that kind of region of the Middle East that worship, well, that their flags, a lot of their flags have a crescent moon on it. Again, you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying, what kind of religion I'm referring to here, and what kind of clothing they wear and stuff like that. So there was just loads of them, absolutely loads of them around, and everywhere I looked, they were dressed like that. They were dressed like in the Middle East, in that kind of traditional culture of those kind of countries, which was a kind of bit weird, because as far as I know, I wasn't actually in those kind of countries. I was in the UK, and I was like, wow, what's changed? Where am I in the UK for it to be like this? Anyway, we're just going to jump to the last bit. Actually, no, I'm going to go through this one. So very, very same night, I had another dream. So again, this feels very kind of end times as well, which is why I thought I'd include it. So I wrote here it was like a plague, but I'm not sure that it was necessarily a plague actually. But I wrote here it was some kind of horrible insect, and it looked like a large wasp. It was oversized. It was a lot bigger than a wasp is, and it was chasing people around everywhere. And we were actually outside of a school, and we were all running into the school and shutting all the windows, frantically shutting windows, closing doors and stuff like that, and then just standing back. And we were just like really, really worried about every little area that could potentially have something come through it. We were we were trying to cover it all up. And now I've had, all the gaps and everything like that. I was trying to do it. So I was thinking, could this be something that they talk about in Revelation, which is they talk about locusts, which have the they have tails like a scorpion that can sting, but people, when they get stung, the pain is going to be so intense that they're going to want to kill, they're going to want to die. It's so intense, but they can't die. A lot of people put a lot of emphasis on the fact that they can't die. Now, does that mean that they're supernaturally, in some way, God is saying that you're going to go through this pain and you're not going to be able to die? Now, what I think personally that is clearly, in my opinion, clearly saying is that is a taste of hell. For me, that's what that means, is a taste of hell. So you're going to be tormented, you're going to be in pain, but you can't check out. You've already died, and now you're in the spirit, and you can't leave this place. Okay, so this is it for you now. This is what it's like, unfortunately. So that's what it makes me think of. And actually, when it talks about the locusts, the plague of locusts, it describes them in a way that defies anything that you could possibly think of. Like that these locusts have the hair of women, so long hair. Okay, that they have like the face of men. That they have something like breastplates of iron, and, as I said, tails like a scorpion. I mean, if you see people draw a picture of what this looks like, I think you should maybe think of this a bit more symbolic, because despite them coming from hell, I don't imagine that they're going to look like that. As I said, I personally think that these are demons being released from the pit, because they come out of the pit. So what they basically do is they come out of the ground. Let's say there's like the abyss is opened and all these things come out. I've had a dream about the abyss, by the way, before. I personally think that when it's talking about locusts, it's talking about the way that they are. If you were to see locusts in the sky, they can blot out the sun. There's so many of them. What do? Well, they just ravish a land, don't they? And then they just move on, and they just move on and move on. Well, if you think of demons that are given the mission, you've got 4 months. I think it's 4 months. It's something like that. They've got a limited time frame in which they can terrorise people. So we've got 4 months to terrorise people, and so they're released. So they just go wild. They're going everywhere. They're going everywhere, and maybe they will go in swarms. Maybe they will go in swarms. Who knows? But the swarming thing could be them coming out of the pit. So if you saw some, let's say millions of creatures coming out of a pit, you would probably describe them like a swarm, or you would describe them like locusts, because that's how they move around. So I personally think it's to do with demons that have been locked up for a certain amount of time, and then they're released. And it's like, this is your time. You're going to get a very limited time on Earth. I'm going to let you go around and do what you want to do, but you can't kill people. You can't kill people. So, but there, when there's a little bit of confusion there, I think is, and this confusion may be on my part because I'm not 100% on it. But when it talks about obviously that people will want to die but they won't be able to, I would have thought if you want to die, I mean, you pick up a gun and you shoot yourself. So it's pretty simple. You jump off a building. If you're in staggering pain and you want to end it, that's what you would do. But I don't know, maybe people won't do it or just don't do it because they know what their fate is, so they'd be going to hell and they don't want to. They want to hang on despite the pain and stuff like that, hang on before going to their fate. So I don't know on that one. Again, Revelation is so incredibly symbolic that it's difficult to know for sure. But I also had another one just to do with that same thing. I can't remember where I put that in my videos, but it was basically this creature that was flying around in our house. And I did the same thing as in this. I was running around, I was shutting all the doors, I was making sure that this thing couldn't get into the children's bedrooms. And there was just one though, but this was sheer panic. And this thing weirdly looked like an acorn. Okay, just the size of an acorn, green as well, like an acorn. And so if you think of an acorn, if you're trying to crush an acorn, you really have to stamp on it, don't you? Because it's quite tough. So that's what this thing was like. So it had buzzed around, and I think I whacked it or something. It went to the floor. Again, I'm inside, and I'm trying to crush this thing. I'm stamping, and I can't kill it. And again, that describes this thing that it talks about. As I said, the breastplates of iron and stuff like that, because it's really strong. Okay. So another thing I would go back to that is because I've seen this as well. Is obviously it describes locusts. And 4 months, as I said, I keep saying 4 months. I might be completely wrong on that. It's definitely a certain amount of months. But if you look up the lifespan of an actual locust, it is something like 4 to 6 months or something like that. So it matches up with locust and real locust. So then sort of people say, there you go. So it is a locust because it's got the same lifespan as a locust. So that would make sense. So you go and you terrorise for a certain period of time because they're naturally going to die up to that point because that's just how long they live. So of course that could be correct as well, So there's so many good theories out there, and obviously that's some of the criticism that the non-Christians say. Oh, you guys can't agree on anything. Well, because there's a lot of room for speculation in things that are symbolic, but of course we do disagree on other bits and pieces. But I think everybody's got to have their own journey and not necessarily stick to a specific denomination or anything. Just read your Bible. You don't necessarily have to be part of a denomination as such. I wouldn't have said. But read your Bible. What does your Bible tell you? And you go by that. That's where the truth lies, not necessarily in all the partitions of Christianity and what that particular one thinks is right and stuff. Just a little bit of a little bit here. So 26th of the 9th. So a little bit later. When did I say this was? When I was talking through this was December 2023. So this is about 9 months later. I find out that there's loads of dreams and they're all about twin moons, and I was like, hang on a minute, twin things in the sky. I had that previously, and then I look back and see, oh no, it's twin suns. Oh okay, I haven't had twin moons. Since then, I have had twin moons. But interestingly, this other YouTuber had mentioned how he had, or his dad had, a rapture dream, and it involved twin moons. And also it had UFOs coming in, and it was like they were coming out of light speed and go, when they go, and then they kind of slow down as they enter the atmosphere. And they were all triangle-shaped UFOs. I get triangle-shaped UFOs all the time. I'm not picking this up from anyone. This is just what they are. This is just what I see. So it's interesting when you get that kind of convergence of everyone is all seeing the same thing, which is, again, it kind of confirms stuff for you, doesn't it? But as I said, that's really all I wanted to cover off on there. So as I said, it's a combination of, 3 dreams? Was that 3 dreams? And again, a little bit about the twin moons and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully that's a little bit interesting. Obviously, I gave you a little bit to do with Revelation and stuff there. Obviously, look it up for yourself. So if you put in things like, tell me a bit about the locusts in Revelation, Google that. You'll find loads of information on it, and you'll see what I mean by the description is so wide. The description of these different things is you can't really hold it in your mind and visualize what that looks like. I mean, when I was a Christian and it was talking about these things, and does it say something like they make the noise of charging horses or something like that? And they had the swarming. So I was thinking locusts. So they swarm, don't they? And I was thinking, Okay, and they're strong because they're like iron, they're like breastplates of iron. Okay. And he's describing them like an insect. Okay. And I'm putting all these things together, and they've got a sting like a sting like a scorpion. I think, could that not be a drone? Could it not be a drone swarm? Because that makes the sound of a swarm. Well, in a swarm, it makes a huge amount of sound. But sound of charging, like charging horses, I don't know about that. But then it has a face like a human. Well, what does that mean? That it's made by humans? And John, when he was writing this down, he knew that it wasn't natural. How close did he see it? All these kind of things you kind of question. But I reckon it's a drone swarm. But then they come from the abyss. So if they come from the abyss, well, why would, kind of like all the dark underworld release a drone swarm? Then it just doesn't start to make sense, does it? So like, maybe not then. But it was ticking a lot of boxes, something strong, well, a drone, moves a bit like an insect. Well, it does kind of move weird, doesn't it? And you get them in swarms, yes, you get them in swarms. They are being fixed with weapons. Well, yes, they are. So you can imagine a weapon that's maybe a stun gun or something that fires something into them that causes them extreme pain and incapacitates an enemy. Yeah, you could see that happening. But I don't know. I don't think so. As I said, I personally think it's to do with actual demons being released. Because the terror that would cause of an unseen sort of enemy, or even worse, demons you could see. Can you imagine the terror that would create? So, we'll find out. We'll find out all of this stuff eventually. And that's going to be an interesting interesting sort of thing, isn't it? As I said, could well be part of our orientation that I've mentioned. We get up to heaven, it's like, right, okay, this is what's going to happen, this is what it's going to look like, this is when all these bits and pieces are going to be happening, all that sort of stuff. I can imagine that being fascinating, how all these things are going to all come together. But as I've said many times, you do not want to be around for the book of Revelation to come alive, and you're here for it. You definitely do not want to be here. That is the most terrifying thing you could possibly think of. Okay. Now, if you're not Christian, and obviously this could clearly be the case, find my videos that say Sinner's Prayer. Go through that. As I said, I've said many times, it's not magic, but it does cover off all the bits and pieces, and then that opens a door. It creates a an opening for God to come in and start working on your life and start making changes, and start convicting you of your sin and starting to transform you. And then there will be a point where you hit this kind of threshold point, and a lot of people will just break down. They'll realise the power of their sin because the Holy Spirit is going to be convicting you of it. Even you, if you think you might be the best person on the planet, or I'm not too bad, I'm actually a nice person, I do this, I do that. I'm telling you, when God's judgment comes upon you, you will feel it. And as I said, hopefully you'll get the opportunity. Okay, so if you say that, then, and even as I said in there, I always mention on the Sinner's Prayer at the end, invite the Holy Spirit into your life. Start changing me. Start your work. So as I say, go through that, find that, and don't be here for this. Don't be here for these things I talk through. I talk through some pretty scary stuff on these dreams of things I've been shown. These are to warn people and to educate people on certain aspects of the Bible. I've been doing a lot of stuff which has been feeling like it's a bit more Bible study wise. I did do a lot of Bible studies in my early days of being a Christian. Obviously it's only been 2.5 years roughly anyway. So I haven't really done much of that recently. Yeah, it's been going that way. A lot of the stuff is a lot of scripture-based stuff. So, as I said, look into these things. There's never been a better time to access this information. We've never been in a better position to truly know the Bible than we do right now. So now is the time. Okay, hopefully you hear this message and act on it. And hopefully I'll see you soon. Bye.